Hello and welcome to the Memory Card. In just a couple days, we're getting Super Mario Odyssey for the Nintendo Switch. And since that game has taken us back to the roots of open exploration in a 3D Mario game, I figured today would be the best time to take you back to 1996 with Super Mario 64 for the Nintendo 64. Super Mario 64 was one of the two launch titles for the Nintendo 64 in 1996 for North America. For a lot of people, this was their first experience with 3D games. Now, I saw Mario 64 when I was in kindergarten at my daycare, and the son of the lady that ran my daycare had a Nintendo 64, and one day I watched him alongside a lot of other kids there play Mario 64. At the time, I was already familiar with Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, and I would play Crash Bandicoot and the Spyro games on my PlayStation 1, and I loved those games and played them all to death, but none of those compared to Super Mario 64 for me. It blew my mind like few games ever have. 3D games weren't really new to me because of Crash and Spyro, but what you could do in those games was extraordinarily limited in comparison to Super Mario 64. I had never seen such fluid control and movement in a game in such open environments. It was like Mario could do anything. The music also stuck with me. Koji Kondo is easily my favorite video game music composer. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play Super Mario 64 until the end of elementary school when my older brother bought an N64, 4 controllers, and a stack of games from EB Games for about $100. I missed that EB Games. It was nice having a game store that close to home, but now we have GameStops all over the place since they bought them out. Even though by that time I had a PlayStation 2, I still played our N64 all the time. And even though the N64 by that time was dated, I still loved those games in that console. It didn't bug me that the graphics were low res and really polygonal by that time, and that the controller was weird in comparison to the DualShock 2. I didn't care about any of that. I still loved the games, and I still do. Every Mario game tends to have a power-up that defines it. There's the Fire Flower in Mario 1, there's the Cape in Super Mario World, there's the Bee Suit in Mario Galaxy, and in Mario 64 it was the Flying Cap. The Flying Cap is not only on the cover art of the box for Mario 64 because it looks cool, but also because it represents everything that Mario 64 is. Sure, some of the mechanics may not have aged as well, and there have been improvements since then, but this game represented the freedom of 3D games. Now, you weren't just running left to right anymore. You could go anywhere and do anything. It was true freedom in video games. And the joy of flight is still something that the Flying Cap has to this day, even though flying mechanics have been improved since its release. Also, those first levels in Peach's Castle are some of the most memorable and fun levels I've ever played in a game. And I can picture their layouts and the music and the enemies and all that throughout all those levels, and I love playing them over and over again. The attention to detail in Super Mario 64 is what you would expect from a Nintendo game, and it's especially fantastic considering that this was the infancy of 3D games, let alone 3D platforming, and Nintendo was still getting used to this new technology. Crash Bandicoot came out first, but Mario showed everyone how 3D platforming was done. Ever since its release, Mario 64 has been the basic template for just about every 3D platformer made since then. In a lot of ways, this game is similar to the original Super Mario Bros. On the NES. Super Mario Bros. Laid the foundation of the 2D platformer, and is a legendary game that is one of the most definitive releases in the industry. However, the formula has since been improved by other Mario games, like Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, and the new Super Mario Bros. Games. Super Mario 64 has since been surpassed by other 3D Mario games as far as design, camera control, and graphics is concerned. Also, for a lot of people, the more recent 2D and 3D games have aged far better than those landmark releases. However, there is still an intangible magic to Mario 64 that will always have me coming back to this game. It's easily one of my most nostalgic games ever. It's one of those games that reminds me of why I've loved video games for as long as I can remember. Regardless of how long I've been playing this game, I'm still not great at it. I have a much easier time with the Mario Galaxy games, partially because of the control and camera improvements. Although the level design in Mario 64 is something truly unique in comparison to the rest of the 3D Mario games, the levels are far more open and focused on exploration than any other Mario game since the Wii era, or well, since Sunshine. But even then, Mario 64 has a lot more variety than Mario Sunshine in its level design and locations and all that. And that helps make this game feel like a much bigger experience, despite Sunshine making a lot of marked improvements in a fair amount of areas. Even after 21 years, this game is still a blast to play because of the controls and the open level design. The music is fantastic and helps make all of these levels feel very unique, alongside the level design. But one of the most memorable parts of this game is the opening. Mario comes out of a pipe outside of Peach's castle, and the only sound you hear are Mario's feet and the sounds of nature. It gives a sense of weight and importance to this part of the game in a similar way that the sound design in Breath of the Wild does. For a lot of people, these were their first steps into 3D games, and Mario was carrying them into the future of video games, and the sound lets people have that breathing room to just take it all in. For me, these first steps with Mario was showing me what video games could be and what their possibilities really were. Pokemon had made an impression on me, partially because of the fact that it was a fully fleshed out world that I could carry in my pocket. And Super Mario 64 blew me away because it was like the TV was a window into this brand new open world, and Mario was having me go along on the adventure with him. Despite my intense nostalgia and love for this game, it definitely shows its age. Since this was the beginning of 3D games, the early 3D polygonal graphics have not aged with the same grace of many Super Nintendo games or the few 2D games on the N64 and PlayStation 1. For people that didn't grow up with an N64, this game will probably look horribly ugly and dated to them, especially if you're trying to play an N64 on a modern HD TV. If you're going to play the N64 nowadays, I would say just dig up an old CRT TV and play it on there because it's a much better experience for old consoles like this. Also, the camera can be a serious pain at times. You have fairly limited camera control, so a lot of times you're at the mercy of the camera angles chosen by the game. These issues don't detract from the experience for me, partially because of the nostalgia, and also just because of how fun this game is over 2 decades later. Also, to me, there's a charm to N64 and PlayStation 1 graphics that, despite their age and the many improvements of 3D games have had since then, they still appeal to me, especially the N64 graphics. Super Mario 64 is remembered as one of the most important revolutionary games ever made, let alone one of the best launch titles ever made. And that's a legacy that this game absolutely earns. This game has influenced almost every 3D platformer made since its release, and 3D games in general. Mario has an uncanny way of paving the way for the rest of the video game industry. In 1985, he did it for 2D platformers and the North American game market. And he did it again in 1996 for 3D games. And from the look of things, Super Mario Odyssey is not only going to honor the legacy of this game, but take Mario to new heights. It's been very fun for me to go back and play Super Mario 64 as I await the release of Super Mario Odyssey on the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo managed to break ground with the Mario and Zelda games like few companies really can say they've done. Mario 64 and also the Zelda games on the N64 are pretty much the blueprints of a lot of 3D games to varying degrees. And it is more convenient to try and play Mario 64 on the Wii U or the Wii's virtual consoles, but even if it's just for the historical aspect of it or the nostalgia, I still think that there's a certain magic to playing Mario 64 on the original cartridge on an N64 with that controller in your hand on an old CRT TV. But there has been a remake of it on the DS, but I don't think it controls anywhere near as well because you're using a D-pad in 3D space, and that just does not work as well as an analog stick. And that's why they put analog sticks on the DualShock 1. But for someone trying to play Mario 64 for the first time today, it's probably going to be really rough for them, not just graphically, but for the camera controls and all that. It'd be easier to recommend them to play Mario Sunshine or the Galaxy games or 3D World or anything like that. But I still think, again, even if it's just for the historical aspects of the importance of this game, you do owe it to yourself to play Mario 64 for at least one time. At least once. But regardless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time on the memory card, where I kick off Zelda month for the month of November.